coming, and we'll get started. Let's get started with a word of prayer. Remember our preacher, and Stacy, she said all her tooth stuff is, she thinks going to be all right, going to heal up, but it didn't look that way for a while. It was. Yeah, well, she had an infection there the size of a quarter up in her gum, so yeah. So anyway, so glad she's getting along as good as she is. There you are. Pray for Lorraine and I both. We're still at. There was no change in time zone. They're in the same time zone that we are, which is kind of ironic. But laying over the airport 15 hours just does something to you. So we had that. Who else need to remember? Need to remember Betty. Good to see her this morning. Jack in our prayers. Haven't checked on my friend John Gibney. Had a stroke, but pray for him. Pray for all those people that we saw and visited with, and we'll talk a little more about that. But pray for the church there in Coscos and the one in Trujillo, El Porvenir. And Carlos Angula, who was the missionary that I met in 1972 down there, he and his wife and their grandson are in Port Salerno. They flew from Peru Wednesday, and he's here. His sponsoring church is Sweet Home, Alabama, and Arkansas. I forget the city. Anyway, he's here to go see his sponsoring pastor and visit with folks, do some deputation. Huh? What? That's Ruthie's son. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so pray for traveling grace for him. Who else? Okay, all right. Okay, y'all hanging around or traveling this week or? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, right. Not contagious, but yeah, routine. Yeah, I woke up Thursday morning in Cusco, 11,000 feet, trying to catch my breath. So, yeah, that was after I'd been there since Wednesday or Tuesday, so. All right, let's pray. And Richard, would you lead us, please? Amen. Thank you. So I've got over 400 photos, but the internet just the door slammed shut almost this afternoon. That was the only way I could get my pictures off of here. So I don't have very many pictures for you, but hopefully it'll be enough to tell the story. In 1972, Leon Jasper, who was born and raised in Somerset, Kentucky, was a very successful businessman. He had, Anna, can you turn off some more of these lights, maybe? He had been a very successful businessman, but he'd gotten saved in his 20s and had actually gone on some mission trips down into Mexico and all. So he wasn't new to travel. He, like I say, was a very successful businessman, and the Lord laid it on his heart, called him to preach. Well, he only had a high school diploma, and he couldn't find a school or Bible college that would accept him with just and I think it was a GED, except Florida Baptist Schools in Lakeland. And so in 1971, he moved his family down from Somerset, Kentucky. And that same year, I started at the Florida Baptist Schools, not as a preacher, but as a Christian wanting education, a Christian environment. Was thinking about a bookkeeping or certified public accounting degree, and school was not certified, accredited, I mean, but they had someone there who had a PhD in educational psychology, and so that was a goal. So I was kind of a guinea pig to start, and so I did, but I met Leon Jasper in that first year, and our pastor, who I knew, we knew him from youth meetings, and we were in high school. He started that same year, and which was pretty phenomenal because up to about a year before that, last thing he wanted to do was preach because his daddy was a preacher, and he got ribbed all the time in high school because his daddy was a preacher, pastor. But anyway, the Lord called him that summer, so Jim started Florida Baptist Schools that year. And so through that year, I got to know Leon a little bit. I had my private pilot's license. Leon, he had about 500 or 600 hours and had his own plane and that sort of thing. So that kind of brought us together some. And because I'd traveled before, I had a passport. So somewhere toward the spring of 1972, he came to me and talked to me about this trip that he wanted to make. He wanted to go visit some missionaries and just find out what their need was. We weren't going to take them any money or anything. We were just going to go talk to them and visit with them and see if there's anything they needed. And he asked me to go. And I teased. I had a cowlick right here back then. I think it was on this side. That's what I remember. There's not any evidence. But anyway, and I didn't get permission to go first time. There was kind of a rebellion, and I won't go into that. But anyway, so Leon and I went on a 2-week survey trip. We went to Costa Rica, and we visited 2 places there. One place was down on the Pacific Ocean, a little town called Golfito, but it was pretty well known because Chiquita banana, United States fruit, had about 1 million acres of banana trees down there, and they were employing people, and about every month or 3 weeks there'd be a boat come into that harbor there, and I don't know if they dredged it out. It was just deep enough to take those big ships, but it'd have to come and you'd have to drop anchor here and spin the tail end of it around to line up with the dock. But they'd spend all night loading that banana boat. They had trains that would bring the bananas in. But we met with Phil Gavila there, and he had a church and had a pretty good-sized congregation, but there were 3, the city of Golfito had 3 city buses. And it was kind of long, probably 5 miles long. It wasn't very wide, just very narrow, but about 5 miles long. And so, there were church members that didn't make it to church because the city bus broke down. So we visited there with Brother Phil Gavila. Then we flew back up and met Gene Ray Ward. This was Gene Ray Ward. He was wanting to build a building there and stay with him a few days. And then we got on a plane and flew down to Peru and met Carlos Angulo and his young wife, Anna Marie. They'd been married about 3 months. We stayed there in the apartment with them and went to his church. Now, Carlos is Peruvian. He was born in Cascas, Peru, raised Catholic, but he was about 15 years old, an independent Baptist missionary from Tampa, Florida, had a mule he journeyed up in the Andes Mountains and went to Cascas and preached, and Carlos got saved at about 15. And so, but Carlos had a 4-year degree from the University of Trujillo. He came to the States, went to the Baptist Seminary in Little Rock, Arkansas. Knew very little English. He told a story one time about he learned how to say coffee and apple pie in English. And he had this restaurant nearby that he went to, and for week after week after week, he'd go there, and the waitress see him come, she'd just bring him coffee and apple pie. Well, finally he learned the word hamburger in English. And he was so excited, he went there and sat down. She brought him coffee and apple pie, didn't give him a chance to order. But anyway, I think last year he was there, he actually taught Spanish in the University of Arkansas. Carlos Angulo is one of the most educated men I know. He has his PhD in archaeology. He hosts archaeologists from Yale and Harvard because Peru is an archaeological gold mine. And so, very educated man, but very committed to his people. But we visited his church that he'd started there. And so we drove, and I don't know how many paved roads there were back then, not as many as there are today. Right, but we were on this dirt street and went to kind of this corner of this section, and here was this adobe building, adobe home, some lean-tos in the back, and that was the church. He's told us stories how that he would come there to the church, and the street would just be crowded with people, and he knew in the center of that crowd there was two men having a knife fight. And he had a little old English Ford V4 engine with 5-speed on the column. And he'd pull up to the crowd, and he'd just kind of ease into the crowd, and people would park, and he'd drive in the middle of that crowd and break up that fight. And so the people in the community really respected him. And today, where that adobe building was, there's paved street and a 3-story building, and congregation of about 50 or 60 people regular there. In 1985, Daddy, myself, and our good friend Bobby Jefferson went and built pews. They're still using those pews. We sat in those pews. I was given an opportunity to speak our first Sunday there. And so that was what Leon went and saw in 72. I went back in 75. There was an evangelistic campaign where we had a film of the Jesus film in Spanish. Had a video 8 projector and a generator, and we had to buy a vehicle. And but we went to 2 or 3 spots up and down the coast of Peru, and there's a work there in one of those places that we stopped. And then in 81, Paul Sutton and I went down and helped. There was a bus that we bought in Costa Rica, and they put it on a boat and took it down to Lima, and finally got it through customs. The Peruvian government didn't want Carlos to have that bus. They tried every trick they could to try to keep it from getting cleared out of customs, but got that done. And went back in 85 with Daddy and Bobby Jemerson, built pews. Went back in 87 with Daddy and my brother, and we built pews for another church that has a school there. And then in 1994, 7 members of our church with 7 members from other churches in the area went down to Florencia, there in Trujillo, and built trusses and built the roof on the Florencia church where the school is. So, and then we went back in 2000, we should have brought the picture, in 2013, and built a pulpit and communion table and pulpit chairs for the church where we had the Vacation Bible School. So anyway, this was my 8th trip to kind of explain all that, but it was the first trip that Lorraine went with me on, and I was so happy to have her, and because I didn't know physically how the country proved a rough, rugged country, but that's the beauty of it. You have, on the Pacific coast, you have about 30 miles of just desert. And then you have the first range of the Andes Mountains goes up about 8,000 feet, drops off. And then the second range goes up about 12,000 feet, drops off. Third range about 8,000, and you got the high jungle and the low jungle, and it's about 600 miles from east to west. That's how wide it is. So it is a very rough and rugged country. But anyway, we were glad to go. So Leon and I came back from that trip in 72, and Leon had a good preacher friend that acted the missions teacher there at Florida Baptist School, Harold Williams. And they said, okay, missionaries have needs. We want to translate that need to churches. And we think it'd be a positive thing if we could get people out of the pew, get a passport, buy a ticket, and go see what we saw. Go see the need for themselves. Go be involved in a project to help meet that need. So Macedonia Missionary Service was formed in May of 1973. But before that happened, after we came back from our trip, second year of school there at Florida Baptist Schools, Bill Gavila needed a bus in Costa Rica. And so bought a bus, had a bunch of those preacher guys that were mechanics and body men and all, went through that bus, fixed it all up, repaired everything, painted it. And that May, 8 people, including our pastor, climbed on that bus in Lakeland, Florida, and drove it 6,000 miles to Golfito, Costa Rica, left it, and flew home. And that was first of many, many, many vehicles that had been delivered on the field. The verse in Lamentation 3:51 says, "My eye affecteth my heart." And that's kind of a theme verse for Macedonian and what's been accomplished through the years. They're a parachurch organization. They're sponsored by 3 different churches across the country. Daddy was one of the first directors of it. They have trustees, and I've been a director for about the last 8 years. So that's Macedonian Missionary Service. This was the first MAC trip. This is the shirt from Louisiana that Lorraine and Nathan and Faith and Thomas and Titus went on for the Vacation Bible School there. But this was a MAC trip, first one I've been on. Macedonia does building projects. That's when we hook up our RV and go to Pineville, Louisiana, or Iuka, Mississippi, or Mount Pleasant, Texas. They have a mechanics ministry. There are 3 mechanic shops now. One in Ackworth, Georgia, another one in Mount Pleasant, Texas, and one in Somerset, Kentucky. And all three of those are run by mechanics that, work for local auto dealerships for 25, 30 years. They've got the knowledge. They understand how to work on vehicles. And this is a ministry they've surrendered to. The Lord's called them to this, and they solicit support from churches. They do work on vehicles for individuals. Along with they're allowed to do that. But a missionary home on deputation, driving across the country, has a problem, he can call them, and they help him diagnose the problem. If he's close by or coming through that, he'll stop, and the mechanic will work on it and fix the car. It's been a real blessing for those. So that's the mechanic ministry, the building ministry, the Mac trips. There's the radio ministry. Macedonian Call, Harold Williams. He was the other co-founder with Leon of the Macedonian Missionary Service. Excellent speaker. And for about 20 years, he recorded 15-minute programs. And Transworld Radio broadcast the Macedonian Call over the station in Bonaire, which is right down off Venezuela. 450,000 watt station. Transmits them in Guam from the Transworld Radio Tower there. It's been translated into Burmese, Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Russian, Swahili, Spanish. It is one of the top 5 Transworld Radio broadcasts. They've rated it that over the last 40 years. So it's a tremendous ministry, the Macedonian Call ministry is. And then there's the medical missionary. You can go on a medical missionary trip with Macedonian. Dr. Hugo Malazzi from San Fernandito, Mexico, about due west here, about 150 miles across the Gulf. He is a certified doctor in Mexico, and he leads the MacMed trips, and we haven't been on one of those. But anyway, just a multifaceted ministry that Macedonian is able to provide. This was a Mac trip, and there were 2 that were kind of ongoing. There was one going on El Salvador, and this one that was going on in Peru. There's one, they've got the dates in the Philippines in July. They're still trying to, I think, work out the date on that. All right, next slide. All right, Mike Ryan, he is one of the 2 Mac trip coordinators. Mike Ryan and his wife Erica, they're members of Hillcrest Baptist Church in Ackworth, Georgia. Mike Maxwell's their pastor. The Lord has called Mike to preach, but he said he's a real estate locator. He's got a business. He's a real estate locator. He got 15 dump trucks, and he hauls dirt and rock and all up there in Georgia. And we've been, he was, of course, getting texts and that sort of thing while he was gone. Up there in North Georgia, they've had terrible weather, and you don't run dump trucks when there's water on the ground and mud and that sort of thing. He said for the last 3 months, they have not worked a full 40-hour week, although he's paying his drivers and all. But Mike is got a heart for the Lord. And so this was the second Vacation Bible School that's been held in Cascas, Peru, where we were at. And then there's one planned for next year. The crew over here, there's Mike and Erica Ryan from Tina Atkins. That's A-T-K, I misspelled that. Tina and Erica are good friends. They've worked together in the past in medical profession. Jeremy and Tanya Smith, they live in Tennessee. Luke and Taylor Rainey live in Groveland. They're members of Bay Lake Baptist Church. Lorraine and I from Wauchula. Then there was Yorley, Y-O-R-I-L-Y, Raquel, and Samuel Armino. Raquel is Carlos and Anna Maria's daughter. She's been born since we've gone down there and been visiting. They were from Trujillo and Coscas. Yorley is the pastor of the church there in Coscas, but they live with Carlos and Anna Marie down in Trujillo. So Wednesdays, they get in, they drive, and it's about 2.5 hours to Coscas. And, they're working on 64 out there. I'll be glad when I get that fixed, man. That's getting to be a rocky. But the road to Coscas, our stretch of road, our terrible stretch of road is a piece of cake. Because sometimes you're on stone, sometimes you're just on shell road, and so Yorley and Raquel and Samuel, their son, they drive from Trujillo to Coscas for Wednesday, and then drive home at night. And then on Sundays they go up on Saturday, and they're there for services Sunday night, and then they drive home Sunday night. Samuel's 16. But he's already finished high school, and he's going to college. He wants to be a neurosurgeon. That's his goal. Raquel, she's a nurse. Got 5 years of college education as a nurse. Yorley's got 5 years as a lawyer. That's his dad is a lawyer, and also now that's not what they're doing to support themselves right now. But these are educated people. Not everybody in Peru, is that level of education, but they're educated folks. Then there's Ruthie, and that's Raquel's sister. That's Carlos and Anna Maria's other daughter, Raquel, and her daughter Anna Paola. Okay, I have trouble getting my tongue wrapped around that. And there's Carlos Danielle, and that's Ruthie's son. Older son, and Maria Jose, his fiance, you might say. Anyway, but Carlos Danielle, he's going to school to be an architect. Maria Jose, she's gone to school to be an international chef. And also, these are people that got a lot going, a lot on the ball. All right, next slide. All right, this is another picture of us out front. And there's some of the other people from the church there, church members there. And this was the theme of the Vacation Bible School was Proclamation Safari Park. And all the literature and everything was produced by our publication, Bogard Press, out in Texarkana, Arkansas. But they didn't have it in Spanish. So Mike called and got permission from Bogard Press. Kelly Reynolds, she and her husband are missionaries, and they were in Indonesia. And Chase and Kelly Reynolds went to a group of people that had no written language. And they spent time with them, learned their language and all, and translated scripture into their language. But they got Kelly Reynolds and a good friend of hers to translate the literature into Spanish. That's Templo Bautista Missionero, Missionary Baptist Temple. If you know anything about Spanish, they put their adjectives behind the noun. So it's a temple, but it's a Baptist temple, but it's a missionary Baptist temple. And this temple, this church is built on ground that belongs to Carlos, because he was born here, born in Coscas, where this place is. And so he owned the property. They got a vineyard and then another house there. So next slide. All right. Every day, this was after the first day, chaos. Chaos extraordinaire. Trying to get all them youngins in there and get them a name tag and get it filled out. And I told Lorraine, I said, I don't know if anybody's going to come back after the first day, but they did. And average 96. I had the high of 104, but average 96. So the yellow tags are the teenagers, so that's the teenage group. The green ones were the middles. They call. What age was that? And then the orange ones were the little ones. And so so each class had our group helping, but they had Spanish translators, Spanish teachers. Those who spoke Spanish taught the class, and the others just tried to keep a little bit of order while it was going on. The teenagers, Luke Rainey, he's a young man. The Lord's called him to preach. He's a student over at Emmaus, one of Jim's students. He actually taught the young people's class the literature, and then Samuel, Raquel and Yorley's son, translated for him. So that was pretty. Had a good group of teenagers there. So anyway, of course, you can imagine, and everybody that had a name tag, I think, if they came back the next day, they were able to sort it out. But then a lot of them had a lot of stickers, and also, So all in all, there might have been 130 different kids that showed up for those. All right, next picture. Okay, so we had we started Tuesday. It was 3 to 6, kinda. I've been there long enough. We're going to start at 3 o'clock. That might mean 3:30. So más o menos means more or less in Spanish. So that was a term that everybody kind of, or mañana por la mañana. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. It's kind of, and you can let that drive you up the wall, if you let it. But basically, it was 3 to 6. And so that was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 4 days. And there was a time for the lesson, time for arts and craft, and then a time for recreation. And so anyway, things turned out pretty well. But this was Saturday. Saturday we met at 3 down the street from where the church was, the individual community. He owned this property and all, and so they had a soccer game, of course. But this, you can see the chairs. You can imagine what's going on there. Musical chairs. So they did that. What were some of the other games? Oh, there was one. Yeah, there was one contest. There's 3 people, and they had to drink a soda, eat a banana, and a piece of bread. And a tamale. Okay, and whoever got done first won. So anyway, so that was a contest they had, and but during the vacation Bible school, they'd get out and they just blocked the street off, and I don't know if there was any vehicles came through that time. They got out in the street, street by the church, and they played Simon Says and Green Light, Red Light, and that sort of thing. They had a good. And the teenagers, they had some plastic eggs, but they got a spoon, and they had to walk, from here to the front door and dump the spoon and get back. So anyway, things kind of got more organized through the week, maybe. So anyway, but it was just good to be a part. Lorraine was in the class every day, and we had plenty to do up to the time it was time to start. after it got finished. Anyway, but we ate and we ate and we ate. Now, it wasn't quite 1 o'clock, Mas Hermanas. Anyway, so that was the Saturday activities. All right, next. All right, this was the decoration in the church. And that was, a lot of that went on Tuesday. You got the jungle vines, got the monkey, blow up monkeys. There's a big old snake. Nobody said anything about the snake all week long, but the snake was through there. No, they had recorded music and kids songs and that sort of thing. And Raquel, she's a fabulous vocalist, and Samuel, her son, he got a beautiful voice too. So Sunday program included congregational singing, special music by the young people from Temple Baptist Church. Samuel, he played the keyboard. There was a girl who played the saxophone, and the other one played the xylophone. Okay. Anyway, but they'd been practicing all week and did a good job Sunday morning. Raquel, she sang a special. Jeremy Smith, he's up front there on the right. He's from Tennessee. He brought the message, but Samuel, in the jungle shirt there on the left, the blue, he translated for Jeremy. So for 16 years old, Samuel's a pretty sharp young man to be able to do all that. And then we had the VBS closing ceremony with the student receiving their craft activities. And we spent a lot of time Saturday night trying to put that together because they had a string backpack. What was that? A string sack that they decorated like on Wednesday, and they were supposed to put their name on it. Most of them did. So Saturday night when we were trying to, because they had helmets and they had coloring papers that they'd done and all this other stuff, trying to get all that stuff organized and put together. It turned out a lot better than we thought. Yeah. But we brought school supplies to add to it, notebooks and paper and pencils and other stuff like that we had put in there last Saturday night. And really it turned out a lot better than we all thought it was going to. We thought it was going to be a wreck, total wreck, Saturday night. We were trying to get everything together. And I think only one boy wasn't able to find his sack, but then he finally found it, So that was a miracle in and of itself. All right, next slide. This is Yorley Armino, pastor, thanking Jeremy Smith for speaking. Raquel, she brought flowers and all for decoration. So I said, muy bonito. That means very pretty. And so I had her stand and take pictures of the flowers, which are pretty, but Raquel's pretty too. So anyway, but she sang and all. Oh, okay. All right. So they're a sweet couple. All right, next. All right, after 1 week in Coscas, Peru, we drove back to Trujillo after Sunday services. Monday morning, we boarded a LATAM flight from Lima, flew southeast to Cusco, Peru, elevation of 11,167 feet. Cusco is the second highest city in the world, with La Paz, Brazil being the highest at 11,967 feet. After landing, we checked into our hotel, went for supper at the Carpe Diem restaurant. Tuesday, we boarded a tour bus which took us on a tour of Cusco. That evening, we ate supper again at the Carpe Diem restaurant. Wednesday morning, we got up at 5 a.m. to get to the bus station, which took us on a 2-hour and 15-minute bus ride to Machu Picchu train station. The train ride at the bottom of the mountain was about 1 hour. We boarded another bus, which took us up the steep mountainside to the entrance of the Sanctuary Park. 32,540 hectares, which is about 2.2 acres. So over 64,000 acres they've designated as a preserve around this area. There are over 500 specimens of animals, including puma, mountain lion, deer, and they say that the puma follow the deer. They have a bear, species of bear there. Have snakes, lots of snakes, poisonous, non-poisonous. And then there's over 5,000 species of plants that are there. Actually, Cusco's up here at 11,000 feet. Machu Picchu's downhill about 8,000 feet from there. But everything is green, just green as it can be, because they're not that far from the equator. Although at Machu Picchu we did see snow up on some of the mountains that were there. So, but it's their summertime. They're south equator, so it's their summertime. All right, next. All right, so there's the yep. Yeah. 3 weeks, okay. Okay, so that's after probably climbing about 500 steps to get up. We're at the top up here. The sun, anyway, he wanted us to get up there because sometimes fog will roll in and you can't see anything when you're up there up top. So anyway, it's a clear, hot day. We weren't planning on it being that hot. All right, next slide. Yeah, I thought it was. I thought that was the feature picture. You can just see the steepness of the mountains, and you see the terraces and the buildings on the right and on the left. Like I said, they used the rock from the avalanches, but they built steps to get up to that place. I mean, it's just like the top of a pinnacle temple here, but they had steps and trails all up through those mountains. And I don't have any of the history here, but a guy by the name of Hiram Bingham, he was a philosophy professor anyway, he traveled on the Atlantic, got off of a ship on the Atlantic and traveled through Brazil, over all those mountains, was at La Paz, and came to this area, and he was hunting for the lost city of the Incas. And there was a lot of history and all. The Incas built, was it 85 cities on these mountaintops? They built multiple cities on these mountaintops, and there at one time their civilization, there's like 22 million population. I got a picture here. In a minute I'll show you. But of course the Spanish came in 1500, Francisco Pizarro, and they were interested in one thing, the gold, which the Incas didn't value that much because they had more than they knew what to do with it. And so the Spanish came in and defeated the Incas, but this place was so remote, it is so remote, and all that the Incas were able to kind of regroup and built another empire. And the Spaniards, there was like 3 armies came up, and the Incas were able to repel them. And So finally, the Spanish refortified and made it up the top, and we got there, wasn't anybody there. They all left with their gold. And nobody knows where the gold is today. It's still buried somewhere down there. But anyway, they were Machu Picchu. There were only like 500 people that lived there, so it was royalty. They had like university there, had school for girls and school for boys, and so you had to have special privilege to live there. Most of the people lived lower down and farmed and that sort of thing. But the Inca, the big Inca, it's kind of a socialistic. One month out of the year, you were required to come and work and build this city. That was your labor tax. Yeah, that was your labor tax and all. But there was no crime and no lazy people. They didn't tolerate it. You know, if you were lazy, you didn't survive because there are a lot of cliffs out there for you to fall off of. So, but they were very, very organized, and you know what? I've studied this through the years, and I've heard Carlos talk about a lot of the stories about the Incas. They had roads, but Carlos said they never discovered the wheel. They never knew the invention of the wheel. They had horses and that sort of thing. Were able to do incredible stuff like this. The Nazca lines, I've never been to those, but you study those, and the engineering, the technology and the understanding they had. They knew how to cut these rocks and put them together, kind of like Solomon built the temple. They cut those stones out and then set them in place. Incas did the same thing. But all that knowledge, it just got wiped out. You know, Pizarro came in there. He wanted the gold. That's all the Spanish were interested in. And so any of the technology and techniques and all, it got obliterated. All right, next slide. All right, there's the llama. I don't know how long he parked there during the day, but he was parked right there, kind of looking over as people came around. Llama or alpaca? I can't ever tell the difference. Yeah, we visited a place that had llama and alpaca and a lot of other different species. All right, next slide. Okay. We were at one spot there, and our tour guide explained that the winter solstice, the sun was it was just in between the peaks of the mountains. And then there was another little peak. Well, that was January. And then when the sun was over here, that was February. March, April, May, June. I mean, it was just laid out there. And then, of course, the sun went back like that. So they knew what time of year it was, and that sort of thing by the peak of the mountains there. And you see that in the bottom picture, that drawn out. But these cities, the top left picture, all of these cities, Machu Picchu and other cities, were built in the shape of an animal or a creature. And you can look on the left. What does that look like on the left? It's got a head, it's got wings. It's condor. And so Machu Picchu was built in the pattern of the condor. And every one of those cities that were built was built out of patterned after different animal. No, we didn't. They had one in the zoo there, but we weren't able to see it. All right, Anna. All right, the next one this was the tour guide's book, and I was taking pictures of it. And so the next one has something very interesting in it. Okay, on the left-hand side, I didn't get a good picture of it, but you can see from Colombia, Bolivia, Argentina, that was the Inca. That's what the Inca Empire covered, and there were states. And he said something about in some of the writings of George Washington. Washington referred to the United States of the Inca Empire and all. There were 4 states there. But on the right, okay, Inca messages and countable systems. The picture on the bottom right there, that guy, he's the Pony Express. They had a mail system. They had a mail delivery system that covered that whole area. They could deliver mail back and forth, and I thought that was pretty incredible. Yeah, I don't remember. Okay. Their stamp or whatever, address. Yeah. So anyway, pretty incredible stuff going on way back then. All right, next. Okay, we're done. We had an excellent trip traveling with both old and new friends, visiting with old friends in Peru, seeing the results of past building trips and the growth of the churches since 1972. VBS is challenging anywhere in the world. Amen? Anybody want to say amen to that? Anybody been involved with VBS? The language barrier provided an extra level of challenge for us on our trip. Although there were Spanish translation for all the lessons, the communication attention span in any language is a big challenge. Yeah, attention span. Suffice it is to say, the love we showed in being with the kids, the 4 days of vacation Bible school, the play afternoon on Saturday, and the graduation program at the end of the Sunday services was stabilizing and encouraging factor during the week. The only reportable report that we have is there was a young lady, her name was Rosa, she was 18, and a young man, Santiago, 16, he was in the teenage class, had both come to Brother Yorley before and during, said, we want to do more, we want to be more involved in the work of the church. So, don't know about salvation, we may get reports of that later. Travel is always a challenge, especially in a foreign country with a language barrier. We traveled over 7,000 miles by plane, bus, car, and train in our 2-week trip. The trip to Machu Picchu had its challenges, but we were very grateful to be able to visit and learn the interesting facets of the past Peruvian cultures. Mac Trips is scheduling another VBS in Coscas next January with arrival services to follow. Also, a building project to work on Yorley and Raquel's home is being planned for the February 2025. Yorley and Raquel have about a 4,000 square foot home there that's roughed in, but it needs electric, plumbing, a lot of plastering on the outside, but they have, and it's about 30 minutes south of where they want to be able to accompany missionaries while they're there. Yes. Canals, drainage canals. Okay. The first time I heard about El Nino was in Peru, and it's that weather phenomenon right there off the coast of Peru. They get less than 10 inches of rain a year there, so it's a virtual desert. But where they can get water to it, you talk about sugar cane. You been down Belglade? down on the muck, sugarcane, the fields. That's the way it looks on that coast of Peru. And that wasn't always like that. That's happened since I've been going down there. We were in the Big Island of Hawaii on a trip in 2009 or 10, and they said that sugarcane had been like 20% of the economy of the Big Island. But when they took the tariff off, World Trade Organization took the tariff off, that sugarcane business moved to South America. Well, Peru is where it went, and it's sugarcane grows real good down in that sand. Yeah, because they build them out of adobe, and when you get a flash flood like that, it just like washing the dirt away. You know, they grow a lot of rice up in those mountains. We had pictures of mangoes, pomegranates, grapes. I think all the grapes that we've been buying from Winn-Dixie for the last 4 or 5 years are products of Peru. Big grapes too. Mame fruit. Yeah. And then what was that other? It looked like passion fruit vine. The flower looked like the passion, but it was a tubal, a big old fruit like that. And I think we ate some of that, and also kind of paradise place, but. Now, Costco's about 4,000 feet elevation, so it's not real high. Good. Yeah. A lot of chicken, a lot of pollo, but they have fish. Cuy, guinea pig, that was the delicacy of the Incas. And so, yeah, we had some of that just to try it out. Yeah, I ate some pork. Yeah. Prednisone, you can buy prednisone down there. Yep. Yep. And the cocoa, they grow it. And actually, it was in a tea form. It was in leaf form, and then it was in tea bag form. And they recommended you drink that when you get to Cusco. It's coca, and it's supposed to help you with a high altitude. Of course, the cocaine, and when they take those leaves and cook them, and it's so, but they have a drug problem. Coffee in the first hotel, they bring this little urn out, and the coffee's in syrup form. And you just go get some hot water and just pour. Yeah. Amazing. We were there in 75 on that evangelistic campaign on the coast. We were coming back. It was about 80 or 100 miles back up Trujillo, and we had an old 1948 Jeep. And it'd get about 30, 35 mile an hour, about fast to go, and it was cold. And we pulled in the restaurant there, and I was riding with Carlos in that Jeep, and went in and sat down, and they came to him, and he said coffee. He said, well, you want 300-mile coffee, 500-mile coffee, or 800-mile coffee? Because it's on the Pan American Highway, and all those bus drivers are driving from Argentina to Ecuador and all. And Carlos decided to order some 800-mile coffee, and I don't think he slept for a day and a half. I got home. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and sorry we didn't have more pictures. We should have had more pictures, but the internet just yeah, well, good. Well, I got 400 more if you want. Time to look at them. All right, I'm getting the land the plane message over here. So, any word before we're dismissed? All right. Good to see everybody tonight. And well, Bill, will you dismiss us in prayer, please? Sir?